So, fanfiction. Some writers love it and encourage you to do it. Other writers tell you it's a waste of time and you should never ever do it under any circumstances. But which do I think? Hi, I'm Jim Reddy, and you're watching Indie Opinions. In this episode, I'm doing something a little bit different. I know ordinarily I give you guys writing advice and whatnot about how to write effectively or well, but in this Indie Opinions episode, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. So I know that fanfiction has been a very divisive issue for a lot of people for a long time, and I know especially right now there's a whole Twitter war going on about it. So I just thought I'd give my opinion on what I think about fanfiction, but I'm not doing it in like a structure, but I'm doing it in a more structured way than just giving you my opinion. So I'm reacting to a Spark Press. I'm going to be reacting to a Spark Press article on the pros and cons, which I will link in the description. And basically, the person that wrote this talks about the pros and cons as figured by the cons are by what people who don't, well, the cons are by people who don't write fanfiction, what they say is bad about it, and the pros are what people who do write fanfiction say about it. So, both arguments basically. And I'm going to be saying whether or not I agree or disagree with these general points. Then at the end of the video, I'm just gonna give my own basic, like, a conclusion, if you like, of what I actually think of fanfiction. Now, before we start, I'd like to say I am not completely impartial, but I am mostly impartial in this because I have never actually written a fanfiction and I don't really read them. However, that being said, I've never had strong opinions one way or the other about fanfiction. So anyway, let's get into this article. So the first supposed con of fanfiction is that this writer, that the person who wrote the article mentioned, is that it's an originality drought. Because if you think about it, you're writing already set rules. You're not making up your own rules, and you're not developing your own world, etc., etc. Now, whether or not I agree with this, I'd have to say no, not really. I don't think that fanfiction writers in themselves aren't original or they lack potential as writers because that's just a really stupid thing to assume. But I do get what some people mean when they say this. Like, I personally fucking love world building. World building is my shit. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite parts of writing. However, that being said, I know that a lot of writers hate it. They absolutely loathe it. And I guess writing fanfiction just gives you an excuse to practice on other parts of writing that you may want to practice. Like, if you don't give a shit too much about your world building, but you do feel like you need to improve some other aspect, then writing fanfiction, you could just decide to improve your dialogue. Like, it's just a lot easier to do that when you already and publish it when you already have an existing fan base who know the world. Alright, the second con is the stigma around it. Now, I don't really need to go into too much detail about the stigma, I don't think. Like, everyone knows what people who don't write fanfiction think about fanfiction, like the really strong opinions. Like, I know a lot of people hate fanfiction because they call it because they think it's just erotica or it's just erotic. Like, they just turn characters, my beloved characters, are having sex. How dare they, etc., etc. But that's not all that fanfiction is, and it's never been all that fanfiction is. Yes, it can be. It can be quite a big part of it if, depending on the website you use and what filters you're using to try and find them, you can very easily find erotic fanfiction. But that just because it's easily accessible doesn't mean it's pervasive or there's the only thing that you can find. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the stigma around fanfiction just in general. I may do another video going more in depth about stigma in a later episode, in a later season of Indie Opinions, but as of right now, that's just what I want to say about stigma. And another bad thing people say about writing fanfiction is that there's no money in it, because you don't really have any way of publishing them in anything other than forums or websites that specialize in fanfiction, and you won't get paid for it. And yeah, this is true, but I would like to counter this with, if the only reason you write is to make money, you should not be a writer. That is not what writing's about. That's never been what writing's about. I mean, maybe it is for some people, but I just think that that's a really stupid reason to hate fan fiction, because there's no there's no money in it. Like, there's no money in a lot of things people do for fun. There's no money in people drawing if they're not good at it. It doesn't mean people don't do it. It just makes no sense to me how people go like, "Oh, there's no money in it. You can't, so therefore it has no value." Anyway, that's the supposed cons of this article mentioned. And now for the proposed pro. Jesus Christ, that's a mouthful. The pros, supposedly, according to this article. And the first pro is it's a creative exercise. As in, if when you're writing, if you want to, which is what I've said before, if you want to improve a specific aspect of your writing, like say you want to, like I said before, if you want to improve dialogue, but you feel like you're fine with everything else, you can just write dialogue tags without dialogue, without, or like a conversation between two characters without really needing to go into too much detail about other stuff, because people already know the world, they already know the characters, and it helps with like, and if you, this works with all things as well, like if you want to specifically get better at writing a genre, then you can just do genre fan fiction. Like if you, for example, with me, I absolutely suck at erotica, and I don't think I'm ever going to be good at it. But if I ever felt like I wanted to, I'd probably start with fan fiction by writing erotic fan fiction, which I will not credit myself for. You will not be able to find it if I ever do it. But yeah, that's just. Or if you want to write sci-fi and you never really have, or you don't feel like you'd be good at it, it's just practice basically. Like that's just one of the main things about writing in general. You should practice if you want to be good at it. Like practice, 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 and then when you're good enough at it, try and publish. That's just how writing works. So fan fiction is quite an easy means of doing that. And there are other creative process things that they help with, like length. If you're not used to writing a lot, you could write a very long series fan fiction into like a novel length if you're not used to it, which would probably help me, to be honest, because I've never written full novels. Anyway, the next pro is the community. Like, there's already a community set up, so there's already interest in what you have to say, and that it's going to be, given how big each fanfiction community is, there's going to be at least one person who is interested in what you have to, in what spin you're going to put on the characters. Like, if you like gender swap the characters, there are a community of people that would be interested in that. If you decide to completely alter their personalities, there'd be a bunch of, or alter their alignments and make the evil character good and the good character evil, there'd be people who are interested in reading about that. Like just switches in dynamics in general. So yeah, there's already a built-in community that are, well, I would say supportive, but I don't know that much about it. Supposedly they're supportive. Another thing is building a fan base, which is something a lot of actual authors, especially indie authors like me, have a lot of difficulty doing. Because it's hard to build a fan base around an original work. But if you already have a fan base that exists and you're writing for it, it's a lot easier. Like if you're writing a Star Wars fan fiction, people love Star Wars already. People are going to be like, yes, I want to read this. I don't care who wrote it, but I want to read it. Like they don't care about how old you are, how good at writing you are, etc., etc. Well, they might care a little bit about how good you are, but there's honestly less stigma, I would say. And the last point this person made was just personal fulfillment, which is just if people tell you that they think fanfiction's a waste of time, but you enjoy it, just do it anyway. If it helps you feel good, because writing in of itself can be, regardless of the type of writing you're doing, writing can be a form of therapy. It has been for me for the past 7 years. So why shouldn't it be for you, even if you're just writing a fanfiction? But just writing a fanfiction, if you are writing a fanfiction. But like ignoring all of that article, which is going to be linked in the description, so you can find it and read it for yourself. It's not very long. It's like 7 paragraphs, but ignoring that and just going on my opinion about fanfiction, I've never been against it in any sense of the word. I've never had any particular stigma about it either. Like, sure, sometimes when I was younger, I used to think it was fun to like find erotic fan fiction and see how good slash bad it was. But that in a sense that made me interested as well, even if it was birthed from some form of negativity. But I don't do that anymore really. I don't really have the energy. But yeah, fan fiction is just it's just a form of writing, man. It's like any genre. And genres always get bullshit. Like, erotica's still getting bullshit all the time. Romance gets bullshit all the time. Like, how is fan fiction any different to those genres? And like, I know a lot of authors that are famous are like, no, don't write fan fiction of my work. I hate the I I hate the idea of you bastardizing my characters. And I just want to say that if any of you have any inclination to make fan fictions of my characters, if you like my characters enough to do that, then I would just encourage you to. Like, you might be able to do it. You might make do the characters more justice than I can. So why not? And you never know until you try. So anyway, that was just my opinion on fan fiction. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Right on.